Going to bring the work session to order here. Thank y'all all for being here. We'll start off with number one, which is the Fairhope wastewater treatment plant headworks improvements.
Good evening, folks.
Good evening.
So, if you remember back last year under the fiscal year 22 budget, we had asked for appropriations of monies to do a study on the headworks at the wastewater treatment plant. If you remember, we've had multiple odor complaints from the residents that live near and on that side of town, and even back towards the bay side, we've had several multiple complaints with odor. And also, I think Mr. Burrell and Mr. Boone has even visited the plant to show them some of the issues we're having with some bottlenecking. So we employed Garver to look at this back, and I think they finished up somewhere in October, but we waited till the first of the year to present their findings. So they're here tonight, Miss Lindsay Tucker and Wes Caldwell from Garver Associates. So I'd like for them to come forward and give their findings to you all, okay?
Please, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, oh, there it is. How are y'all? How's everybody tonight?
Doing
Lindsay, how are
good.
you?
How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Thanks for having us. Excited to be here. So my name's Lindsay Tucker. I served as the local project manager for this project. And with me tonight is Wes Cardwell, who was our regional design process lead. He specializes in headworks facilities across the southeast. So we're happy to have him here to be able to speak to you as well. So first, I'd like to say that having spent a lot of time with your staff and operations folks, I just want to commend them on the job that they're doing. It's not an easy job, and they do it with such grace, and we're thankful for them. And I also appreciate y'all being here tonight, council members, and for your service. So in this presentation, I'd like to first talk a little bit about what a headworks facility is and why it's so important to the overall treatment process. I'm going to outline some of the specific concerns affecting Fairhope's headworks, and then Wes is going to review the concept design report and our findings and recommendations. So the headworks of a wastewater plant influences the performance of the entire facility. This process receives all of the untreated wastewater that comes through the collection system, and it really acts as a first line of defense for the rest of your plant. This stage of the process removes fines, grit, grease, and other items, ensuring that the wastewater entering the process is consistent. It doesn't contain any trash, solids, or other things that could impact your processes downstream. So when a headworks facility isn't working right, you can see in some of these images examples of that. You will see screenings that should have been caught by the headworks get through into treatment basins. Like we've got a pump here that's all ragged up. We've got a probe. And then we also have sediment that has accumulated in treatment basins downstream. So this is all stuff that over time operations staff will have to deal with and clean out. So increasing their contact time with that and really, doing the job that the headworks should be doing. So that being said, Fairhope's headworks consists of fine screening and grit removal. These are actually photos from the plant. So on the left is your fine screen, and on the right is the aerated grit and grease. So this looks different at various plants. The wastewater plant in Daphne or Foley is going to look a lot different than what you have here. So it's very unique what you have. And actually here is the aerial layout of the plant. If you guys have seen it on Google Maps or if you've been there, it's a larger facility, and the headworks shown in light blue is really quite a small piece of that facility. It's proportion-wise not a large part, but it plays an incredibly vital role in the way that this plant operates. So Garver does a lot of headworks projects across the country, and headworks projects in our terms should really consider 6 facility-specific drivers. The first of which is wastewater flow and characteristics. So how much flow are we expecting? What are our peak flows? And what are the physical and chemical properties of that wastewater coming in? It can look different when you have a lot of industry, or if it's mostly residential, it can be completely different. So secondly is hydraulics. So what is our flow doing when it comes in the headworks? How are we approaching the screens? Are we getting the necessary velocity? Is it laid out properly? Third is redundancy. What are you going to do if you have a failure? What do you have? Do you have a backup plan? Fourth is odor. So where are we located? Are we in a downtown corridor like Fairhope? Are we out in the country? There's different considerations that have to be made based on the facility. Fifth is technology. So are we matching the right technology of screening or grit removal with the plant that we're operating? And then sixth is layout and growth. So are we working within the site plan appropriately to maximize efficiency, and are we taking into account the way in which this plant's going to grow? So those are kind of the 6 main drivers that we look at. And honestly, some plants may only have 1 or 2 things triggered, that they have going on, and other plants may have more. And stakeholders may care more about some of these than others. We've got residents that live right by the plant here in Fairhope that probably care a lot about number 4, about odor. And then we've got operations staff that see the other side of the hydraulics, the redundancy, and the technology. So their drivers are going to be ranked differently than council members or residents. So taking that into account, we've spent a lot of time with staff assembling these Fairhope-specific drivers. We've really tried to take into account all of the feedback we've gotten from not only staff but other engineers in the area. So the first driver that we've identified is the lack of redundancy at the plant. There's only 1 mechanical fine screen at our wastewater plant now. And if that if that screen were to need a part replacement to be rebuilt, which is common, we would have to reroute all of the flow going through the fine screen into the the manual bar screen. So that would involve staff having to rake that manual bar screen every 2 hours or so. So we're having to staff the plant most of the time around the clock. And there was a specific instance conveyed to us by staff where there was a part during COVID that wasn't able to come in for almost 6 months, and they were down without the fine screen for 6 months. So they were having to operate like that, which isn't ideal. It can really take a cut into morale of these operators when they don't have the equipment that they count on working. One of the main drivers, and maybe this one should have been first, is odor control. So y'all are in a downtown area next to a shopping area, next to residences. You're kind of down in a depression. So odor is going to kind of just permeate the area if not handled properly. So really it can impact people differently, but odor was definitely one that seemed like across the board everybody brought that up, is how do we address odor? How do we reduce odor in what we consider for the headworks? So the next is influent hydraulics, increasing flows, and future capacity. So what that means is Fairhope has invested a lot of money and project allocation into upgrading the collection system, rerouting pump stations, upsizing mains. What this can mean, though, is that flow will get to the plant in a much more rapid way, and it'll depend, of course, on the actual flow. But we're seeing that flow could be increasing to the headworks over time, not only from rerouting and changing of lift stations, but just with growth in general. As we add developments and communities, we're adding more flow, and if that's all going to this plant, then we have to take that into account as we look to the future and the future capacity. One of the things that's unique about this plant is that we really have to be thoughtful about how we look at the layout, where we're putting things on the site, where we're considering putting things on the site. We just need to maximize the efficiency of where we're putting things so that over time we're not creating some sort of issue for them looking back saying, oh, we really shouldn't have put that there. So those are kind of what we've summarized as the Fairhope specific drivers for this project. This is a cover of the actual conceptual design report. You guys should all have a copy of that in your press packet. So if you would like some light reading, into the week, feel free. You can read through it and look at all of our hydraulic analysis and all of the detailed design that we did for this. So we looked in the report at various technologies and options to consider. But overall, our recommendation includes constructing a new headworks facility adjacent to the existing, one with 2 fine screening channels, a new grit removal system, a new screenings and grit processing building, and an advanced odor control system. So we'll show you some pictures of that. Wes is going to come and give an overview of that conceptual design recommendation.
All right, good afternoon. Thanks, Lindsay. I always feel like when we do these Headworks talks, there should be a disclaimer at the very beginning because it's not the brightest and shiniest, and usually when you come to visit the plant, this is generally what you try to avoid because it's the one with all the smells. And you know that we're going to have pictures in there that aren't the most attractive, so apologize for not having that disclaimer. But just to kind of pull the highlights out of this conceptual evaluation and show you just a little bit of ultimately what those recommendations are. One of the things that we have to plan for, and it's the unfortunate truth about a wastewater plant, is we can't just close that valve at the front of the plant. This facility has to remain online, and so construction sequencing, how we lay things out, and ultimately how we phase these in so that we're minimizing disruptions to treatment, because that could ultimately mean permit violations, things that are just off the table and things that we'll allow for. So this is just a general overview, and really kind of the point I'm trying to make here is we have to lay these out and we have to complete construction knowing that that facility has to remain online. So generally speaking, to the southwest of this figure is where all of the improvements would generally take place. And I don't want to kind of belabor or try to walk through that because it is a busy image. This is just a rendering of those improvements, and we'll walk through that kind of step by step to show you that facility at its conceptual effort. We're super high level in terms of project definition. As we go through detailed design, we'll be able to really dial down and understand what are the facility-specific requirements that make the most sense for Fairhope so that we're matching the needs of the facility with the ultimate things that this project would provide. But it does fit on the side. If we're looking at a fancy high-level view, this would generally be the area that we're talking about. Conceptual design recommendations, like Lindsay mentioned, are based on project drivers and facility-specific characteristics. So what this rendering is showing, the very first step that flow would flow through is screening channels with fine screens. So Lindsay mentioned redundancy. This would provide staff with the ability to direct flows to another mechanical screen, which is providing more efficient screenings removal, which is ultimately protecting our downstream units. Now, we recognize that Fairhope made an investment with the existing headworks, and that equipment that you have in place could absolutely be relocated and put into these channels. That way it maximizes your investment that you've already made. The next step that flow goes through is what we call grit removal. What we're trying to do is the coffee grounds, the eggshells, the small things that will wear and tear on equipment, but are still small enough that it'll pass through fine screening. This step is designed specifically to remove those. Now, one of the key differences with this step in the process compared to what you have now is it's much more confined. There's not a lot of turbulence, so that means we're able to capture that odor. We can put covers over that, and we don't have to worry about moving equipment needing to access that like you have now. So certainly much more easier in terms of capturing that foul air. Now, again, Headworks is not a luxury process. We're not producing that nice, fine, clean, treated water like we like to see off the back end of the plant. We are producing screenings and we're producing grit. And when we're trying to talk about odor, this is where a lot of that odor potential could come from. So the equipment's one step of it, but we also have to deal with the dumpsters that are going to contain that because, again, they're putting off that foul air that we're concerned about. There's options in terms of how you deal with that. What this facility, in terms of these renderings, show, rather than try to provide bagging systems or other ways to capture that, let's just locate that inside a contained area so we can maximize that foul air containment and pull that out from a specific area so that we're not, again, we're trying to maximize that good neighbor approach that I know Fairhope values. Just a quick look inside that building would show that processing equipment is inside. That's where that dumpster would be located. So in theory, the only time that door would be opened is when the truck comes in to pull that dumpster out, take it to the dump, and bring it back. So again, capturing that air at the source inside. The last thing is odor control, unfortunately, is not just covering the channels or putting things inside. That air is hazardous. That air contains constituents that can lead to corrosion. Hydrogen sulfide is a very hazardous work place environment that we don't want our staff to be around, we have to pull that air out and we have to pass it through an actual treatment system. This system, and again, this technology would be evaluated further. Generally for headworks, we're looking at biological treatment through a biotrickling filter. And then on the backside, just a way to provide insurance, belt and suspenders, if nothing else, a carbon polishing system so that, again, we're maximizing that treatment and we're producing treated air that doesn't have those odorous compounds that again, we're trying to prevent or eliminate. Here is an aerial just to show how that fits onto the facility. And again, there's a lot more details that we're not covering but are available in that report, and would be glad to talk through any of those, any questions that you might have with that. Council, any questions?
There's a lot of information here.
Absolutely.
I have one question. Through the two screening process, are they going, is the flow going through them simultaneously or one at a time, or one and then another and then alternate?
So you can do it a couple of different ways. Some of it is redundancy. Do we want to provide 100% redundancy so that we can go either or? Some approaches to try to minimize equipment size, we can maybe size it to 50-50 maybe for peak flows. Some of that's just an approach depending on staff requirements as well as project budget as well. Generally speaking, for facilities this size, I'm of the opinion that it makes more sense to have a fully redundant screen standing by so that usually you don't have issues during the dry weather when things are running smooth. It's during the middle of the night when you get that gully washer and your flows have really ramped up where it's helpful to have that fully redundant screen so you can switch. And for the instance, when Dennis and his staff was struggling to get a replacement part in and didn't have 6 months to wait, it's nice to have that if you can accommodate that within the project.
You mentioned budget, and I don't know if you would even be able to take a swing at what we're looking at for something like this scope, but.
Yeah, I believe
Yeah.
it's
in the
in,
report.
it's in the
Was it a report?
report,
Okay.
and I believe there was a table.
There's a slide.
I missed that.
Yeah, that.
This was what was presented as a roll-up. Everything that we saw and evaluated, this was about $5.3 million. And again, I throw that up there. There's a lot of opportunities to value engineer that and some of the decisions in terms of, a fully redundant screen versus relocating an existing. Those are absolutely on the table to try to scale those costs back as we need to. But in terms of the conceptual evaluation and the high level we were at, that's the cost that was included.
Yeah, point of information. Speaking of, value engineering, you said we already purchased some materials? I heard you say we already purchased something and we could reuse it in this process?
So in 2015, I believe, the Fairhope made a significant investment and improved a lot of the plant. Now, they installed the mechanical screen as a part of that, and we could absolutely relocate that from its existing channel into the new channel as a way to save some cost.
So we would only then be purchasing one screen?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And is the screen a significant budgeted part in this? Is it $1 million part?
The screen itself is not $1 million part, but it's hundreds of thousands.
Okay, all right. So it's
But do we really save that much by
Right.
paying to move it and reinstall
Right.
it?
If we're talking fully redundant, it's nice
Push.
to have that. Look, the truth of the matter is that screen is 7 years old. It still has life to it. I would certainly try to find a way to accommodate that. If nothing else, from a construction sequencing perspective, right? We're going to have to get the new facility online. And again, we can't just close that valve for wastewater to come in. It'd be nice to have the new screen in place and then pick it up, the existing, and relocate that.
So can we, to remove the odor, you have to do this complete process? Or is this just all that we could do?
So odor control is certainly containing it with covers and things along those lines, but that's not necessarily treatment. If I cover a channel but I don't remove that air out, you lead to corrosion. It's a hydrogen sulfide environment that it's building up. So true treatment is actually pulling that air out and passing it through a treatment system.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes.
Can we just not create a treatment system, or do you have to complete the whole circle?
I would strongly recommend going through a treatment system of some sort to remove the odorous compounds out before you exhaust that into the atmosphere.
Okay.
And there's options available for treatment whether it's, I mentioned that carbon unit on the backside. That's a cheaper alternative on day one, but that carbon may last 2 months, so it becomes a life cycle
Repetitive.
cost. And that's the advantage to the biological system is it's biology operating, let that carry the heavy load, and then maybe carbon on the backside as a polishing step to again, remove as much compounds as possible.
Okay.
And is this just creating a redundant flow, or does this include upgrading the current system that we have as well?
So it would be effectively decommissioning the current
Got it,
facility
and
that we have
rebuilding,
now. And
rebuilding with redundant capacity.
And once this facility would be up and running, we would be able to demolish the existing channels, create some real estate that the staff could have, and kind of the space we're gonna occupy as a part of the new facility would be able to give back after taking the existing facilities offline.
How inevitable is this? How old is our plant right now as far as, what's the lifespan of before most people do a reinvention like this?
So generally, process equipment, depending on what stage of the plant you're in, on the front end, you may get less life. 15 to 20 years is a general. If we're doing a life cycle evaluation, I would suggest anything beyond 20 years is you're kind of kidding yourself. Structurally, channels themselves, depending on if you have a lot of corrosion, concrete, as long as it's in good shape, is 40, 50 years. I don't know the actual date of the existing facility, so I can't share that.
Okay.
So hopefully that gives you enough context.
So where he's talking about existing was put in 96, 97, that time. So we upgraded the screening, pretty much kept the grease and grit the same as it was. We did buy some new equipment because it's a pump pumping sand, which basically wears out. So the other area, like he was talking about, the new screen went in on the side of a manual screen. So that's potato rake scraping, basically.
Okay.
So you have bars that catch paper, plastic, and other objects,
Right.
including 2x4s, cinder blocks, bricks, all that different kind of thing. So anyway, so that was done in 14, 15, that last upgrade. And that particular screen, they talk about, if you go by their maintenance, 10 years, it's time to rebuild. That sprockets change, just the main moving parts, which runs pretty much continuous. Low flows, it cuts off, it goes by flow. So as the flow rises, as the screen gets stopped up, flow rises, and then it cuts on and cleans the screen. So during heavy rain, continuous, and it may run that way for a full day before, the flows go back to normal. Right now, he showed the dumpsters and rags and that kind of thing, so that's open at this point. I know Councilman Boone has been, and Councilman Burrell, they've seen the facility, and y'all probably went down there
Yeah, I've been
a
down
time or two, So that's the area when you first come down the hill. So we have dumpsters that catch, which was added, a compactor, which catches and just squeezes everything because of the, just dries things out. Let's move on. I'm sorry. So that goes into a
Good way
big
to say
dumpster. That goes into a big dumpster with grit and grease. So grease is manually taken out, basically lifts up and you scrape it out.
Okay.
About 15, 16 foot high. It shoots off in the dumpster. And then the grit, which he talked about, coffee grounds, sand is a big thing. We have a lot of sand, obviously, you know that. And it does get into the system, which wears out pumps, as he was talking about. So any kind of maintenance on this screen and parts are sometimes hard to get before even COVID. Just, you know, it's from Canada is where it came from. and
Right.
Anyway, it may take 16 hours like we had a major repair.
Right.
So we're manually screening this that whole time, trying to get the automated screen back going, but anyway.
So,
I know I didn't probably answer
no,
your
you did.
question.
So if we do this, or when, you know, you're saying that we'll have a more opportunity to get parts and less of the manual stuff? I mean, is that what I'm hearing? I mean,
So
does it work, is it a more efficient?
we can still get parts, but it would
Okay.
be a rebuild. It's, you know, it says 10 years, but you're probably ready to start rebuilding next year, about 8 years. You know, it's the only one, so it runs all the time. It never shuts off, very seldom anyway. The other thing I guess I was gonna say real quick was the odor. So right now we have misters with more or less smell good.
Fragrance.
You know, a fragrant, a deodorant. It doesn't do anything. You just kind of point it toward our friends on Summit. you know.
Right.
And it does depend on the way the wind blows, that kind of thing. Summer times are worse because what sits in these dumpsters are picked up 3 times a week. But, you know, think about what it is, and sitting in our wonderful weather during the summertime, it's, you know, it heats up. So, but we do have sprayers along the back fence area to help with that. Dentists they do a great job. I don't-
Okay.
You paint quite the colorful picture for us.
I apologize.
Again, I tried to warn y'all, there's nothing.
Hey, I was expecting more graphic images in here, okay, so that's
They're
that's
hidden.
perfect, that's
They're
perfect. Council, y'all got any other questions at
I
this
got
time?
one question.
Go ahead.
By what we're putting inside the building is strictly the dumpster for the residents, is that correct?
For the process screenings and the
screening
process.
process and the flow and hydraulics is all outside.
It is.
What's the percentage of odor that comes from the residue as opposed to the hydraulics, the turbulence?
So generally, turbulence is what creates that, which is one of the
Right.
issues with the aerated grit system that you have now. I describe it kind of as, again, I'm gonna say jacuzzi, and you think of the odor offset of that. So the process that we've got designed or proposed as a part of this is a low turbulence process. So coming through the screens, there is more turbulence associated with that, so you are off-putting some odors, but the heavy odor potential does come from the actual screenings and the grit. And there's things that you try to do to eliminate that. One is that processing step includes washing, so you're trying to wash all of the organics off as much as you can to create a less smelling product, but it is what it is, and you can only clean that up so much. So a majority of the nuisance odors in Headworks facilities come from the actual dumpsters and the actual screenings and grit that itself.
And I think in this, it talks about the sludge process also. So that would be an area that would do the process of the sludge also. Where it's open, but it usually doesn't have smell most of the time. You know, it may be more of a sulfur smell because hot lime heats up. It's a different smell. Maybe not stinky smell, but a different smell. And that sometimes will make, you know, we get some calls for that.
I think
Smell something.
I think stinky's appropriate. I don't know. I don't.
No.
We call it poop
On the
rock.
sludge side, it's not a stinky
More
smell.
fertilizer.
When I was in the business, it smelled like money.
No doubt.
So
That's
to
exactly
Tim's
right.
point, the facility does have a bay which would be contained on 3 sides. Again, trying to maximize and be that good neighbor that I know that matters. So trying to at least keep that wind direction from blowing it right into a backyard on the back side of the plant property.
I got one more point of information. So with this a more efficient opportunity that we have here, will this thing break down like we're talking about, where the guys have to do it manual? I'm hearing a lot of manual you know, which takes away from.
It's a
other-
mechanical piece, so the intent
So,
is
yeah.
to provide them with the redundancy so that it doesn't have to, or that they can split the time and, you know, while one is down, they can direct the flow to the other side like we were talking about. But the intent is, in terms of operation, this is not where their attention should be. So we try to provide them, you know, with reliability here so that they can concentrate on the true treatment process itself and making sure that they're producing that high-quality water on the back end.
Yeah, I'm just thinking it may be more work too, though. I'm thinking if two of them break at the same time, you're doubling up on the manual scraping, right? I'm just talking out loud. I'm just being,
Yeah,
you
it
know.
wouldn't be any different than it is now with the manual.
That's what I'm-
If
okay.
both of them
So
go down.
Wow.
hopefully it would,
Okay.
you know, increase or decrease the chances that both go
Okay.
down at once.
That's what-
It
Maybe,
would allow them to do the proactive maintenance that they need to, and rather than just kind of like waiting for it to fail. Because now, I mean, the screen they have now probably needs to be rebuilt, and I mean, what do you do?
Do these
Abandon the
equipment,
facility
right,
24
do y'all have a percentage on your fail rates? Or is there numbers in that big packet that shows me some type of metric of?
It
to
doesn't,
convince?
and some of it varies by technology. Unfortunately, the more efficient process, the more efficient screen that you have is more mechanical items. So you kind of have to weigh that trade-off. We could dial back on that. There's certainly technologies that are much more just robust, for lack of a better word.
Okay.
And there's less wear and tear, there's less pieces to break. And those are the ones that you give up the efficiency, but it is going to run. And they're, you know, they're proven. And so that's certainly on the table as a part of the design, is to weigh, hey, maybe relocating the existing one that's a highly efficient unit, but let's put something in that, okay, maybe we don't hit that peak efficiency. And good efficiency for these is somewhere 80 to 85%. Maybe we dial back and look at a technology that could hit 60%, but it's going to be there and it's going to run, right? You kind of have to
I
weigh
mean,
a
that's
lot
what
of that.
I'm saying. I'm hearing what Tim is telling me,
Yeah.
so I'm kind of bouncing off of Tim a little bit, trying
Sure.
to be an advocate here, but,
so
you know.
what we had, for instance, before was basically looked like a rake. It would go down and lift up, go down and lift up. Now we have a screen that will catch a Q-tip. The other screen, it may catch a limb. Seriously, I mean, she showed these big balls of rags, you
Yes,
know,
yes.
and it just accumulates, dental floss and
Wow.
stuff that don't dissolve, not
Right.
toilet paper, but the wipes and that kind of thing, which
Yeah.
is a worldwide
Yeah, that
issue
needs
now.
to be a.
So
yeah.
that's some of the things, how that works. Just to give an example, would be like our UV system. We have two UVs. One doesn't run all the time, but when we have a storm where high flow can happen,
I see what
we
you're saying.
run both.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
We run the main one, and then we go to the backup.
You can do this one like that as well?
And that may
Okay.
be a way, like
All right.
Wes talked about.
I got you.
Maybe not get one that, both of them handle 12 million gallons hydraulically. We don't treat that.
Right.
We only treat 4 million.
Right.
So maybe be able to get one that's, 7 or 8, step those two down, since we have two. At times, they may both have to run at the same time, or, if we have to take one down, the other one can handle our normal flow.
Okay, very good, okay. That makes sense.
I think I got one last kind of two-part question for city staff. So is this project already on our radar for the next couple of years as far as improvement plan? And if so, what's the ballpark budget amount we've got penciled in, and would it qualify for any kind of grant funding or
I think they were looking at.
applying for it? Okay,
Yes.
okay. For ARPA, it would be
In plant.
ADM or ARPA, got it.
Plant-wise, we have some maintenance, like on our filter systems,
Okay.
but it's not major. There's yearly things, blowers and motors, but plant-wise, this is the biggest thing that
That we
would be
need
the
to do.
next step. It's
Okay.
not increasing anything, because out in the field, collection, we've done better, with the infiltration. So our flow had went down. I don't know what the 2023, 22, 23 looked like. 21, 22, it dropped a little bit, And I think that's because of, fixing a lot of collection system issues,
Okay.
So flow-wise, we're about half of what our permit 4 million gallons is. And we pretty much stayed that way for a long time now.
Well, thank you.
With the chemicals and stuff inside the building through the odor, through the air, is the inside gonna be coated at all?
We do have to take special precautions to make sure, now, we are pulling that air out. I don't want you to think that we're just not.
Yeah, but I
There
mean,
would
it's-
actually be a hood.
It's still
that's-
there.
It's still there. Typically, when you design these odor control systems, we would be trying to change that air out at least 12 times every hour.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how much we're moving air. When you walk in, you could feel air moving. It's not a dry space. But things in terms of making sure the inside is coated or making sure that we're using right materials of construction, aluminum, not running copper pipe that could, the hydrogen sulfide could eat. You have to pay attention to that, certainly.
The guys have to go into that closed facility?
Yes, that's a
Is
part of
there
daily
like
operation.
a particular breathing device that they use, filtration or anything that, what I think about is their health and someone running in and out of that, and we don't want any of those issues.
So certainly, there are atmospheric monitoring instruments that you could have. We would want to, for instance, if for some reason the ventilation system is not operating, it's very common to have a light above the door before you go in that would let you know that, hey, we're not changing air, something could be building up. So there are steps, and that should be taken. It should be
Yeah.
incorporated into SOPs, and staff should be trained on what could happen in here had that air not be moving.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's part of the thing that the residents don't understand.
That's right.
They want it covered up. but
Right,
it
I
cover
don't know
up.
if you can concentrate that,
You know,
those
there's other ways you can-
chemicals. Like, I just wouldn't wanna be the guy having to open that door and go in there. I'm just being honest.
So it's
You know,
similar
that
to
just-
like our wells,
you
we
know.
have chlorine, so we have
Yeah,
chlorine monitoring.
yeah.
It's on the outside, before you walk in, you look at it, and, there's other, like a fan, where we pull
I
the air
get it.
out before you go in.
That
kind
still
of thing,
seems caveman to me at this point in the millennium. I'm just saying, is there no other technology
There
that?
absolutely is. One other option,
just trying to-
in lieu of putting that inside, you can actually, on this equipment, there are bagging systems on the back end. So think of those diaper genies that continuous chute that would go on the end of these nozzles. That's another way to capture that in theory, you're capturing that odor. It's only good as long as that bag is a solid tube, right?
Right.
And usually, those go in with the best of intentions, but it requires staff to make sure everything's attached and everything's fixed and you're changing out the bags. And at some facilities I've seen, while it went in that way, a few months later, people either lose interest in maintaining that, and so this nice odor control system that you have maybe not gets maintained. But
Okay.
Councilman, there's absolutely some options to dial that back and still achieve your goals of
Yeah.
odor control.
You did say the building was three-sided, right?
The dewatering bay for the sludge, the left-hand side, three-sided, the building itself is fully contained.
Council, any other additional questions or comments at this point? Appreciate y'all coming and delicately answering some of the questions that we've had.
She skipped over those slides quick.
And
I guess they're in your book, so be careful.
we appreciate it. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
All right, council, moving along. Number 2 on the agenda is the repairs at the Haven.
I think you may have this on your computer screen, but I had already printed it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council, and probably stating the obvious, but as you know, we are fortunate as a city to have the group, the Haven, that basically operates our animal shelter. And we are required as a municipality to have an animal shelter. Many municipalities have the expense not only of maintaining a shelter, but staffing it. We do not have that expense. The current shelter that we have that's located at 559 South Section Street, that is just immediately south of the Public Utilities, Public Works compound, is circa late 90s, early 2000s. So the building itself is 2 decades plus old. It is a very high-use facility. If you've ever been there, it generates a lot of traffic. Unfortunately, we have a lot of animal care needs for animals that are lost and abandoned and need to find homes. It is owned by the city. It is maintained by the city. And in all honesty, the tenants of the Haven did have a home inspector do a pretty thorough inspection, and I don't think there's anything in that inspection that is untrue. The building is showing signs of a high-use building that was probably not built to a commercial standard in its time, and it is definitely long in the tooth and showing its age. Probably the key problem, the biggest issue, is if you recall in this era of construction that the EFIS system came out, and it was just the knees bees. It was the fake stucco that is basically the foam insulation with a stucco coating, and it turned out that it's not been a real good product for a building envelope. Because one, if water gets behind it, it never gets back out, and you end up with rot and things of that nature. Well, imagine this building is very simply a gabled-in structure that is approximately 35 by 80 foot deep that has a false front built on it. And you can kind of see that. I did a little quick rendering. And all of that false front is an EFIS build-out. A couple things along the way has happened. One, we had a pretty significant termite infestation, and most of the damage is contained within that EFIS false front. And I think there's even a picture or two there. You look in the hole in the wall and there's no studs left. They've eaten nothing, and the only thing holding that wall up is just that fake stucco and styrofoam. The other issue, you have a traditional asphalt shingled hip roof that was replaced in 2021 that abuts the backside of that parapet wall, that false front. And it was never, ever built with a proper flashing system. So we've got water intrusion that's probably been going on since the original construction of the building. So we have a front of this building that is in a very poor state of repair, and we have a water intrusion problem. And we recognize that it's time to do something. And understand what we're proposing here is not going to gain them any more capacity in this building, any more square footage. It is just getting it back to a secured envelope and at least getting the front rooms, the front 20% of this building kind of remodeled, since that wall is going to have to come out of there. If you could go to the next 2 slides, that's just a straight on. George and I spent some time looking at it, and of course probably the best roofing system there is just a simple gable roof, and that what we're talking about is we know we have to remove that EFIS system on the front of that building. We have to tear out that wall and build a new front facade. This building is built with roof trusses, so there's no interior bearing walls, and the easiest, most straightforward way to make this a great envelope is just to bring that gable roof out, extend it out, create a full width porch, 6 feet deep, because right now it has a small porch that's centered over the door entrance that is almost unusable because it has these exaggerated 4 foot by 4 foot columns that you just about can't walk between to use the side entrances. And then go back with the exterior wall treatment with like a hardy board product, which is a cementitious fiber board that won't rot, won't burn, and you can either do it in a vertical board and batten, you can do it in a lap siding, and possibly reintroduce the brick wainscoting at the bottom just to kind of give it a pop of texture and color. And I'll be honest with you, I stuck the bracing on the columns, thought it would look cute. It kind of looks like a Western saloon, so I think those would probably go out and paint the columns the same color as the rest of the facade and clean it up a little bit more crisp, but I'm not an architect, I'm an engineer.
A for effort, Richard, A for effort.
It's
So-
cute, Richard, it is cute.
What we're looking at this first phase, and understand between facility maintenance and our phenomenal electrical team, they've already been over trying to deal with some of the, kind of the safety issues with some of the electrical. And I will tell you, one of the greatest challenges, they're tapped out, meaning they've used every circuit in their box there, and there's really just no more room for electrical expansion without a redo. But our goal on this phase of the project would, one, get the envelope put back together so they don't have water intrusion, they don't have a rotten front wall. Since we're taking it all out, replace the 2 front windows in the door system because they're dated, they're not energy efficient, they wouldn't meet current energy code. And since we're going to be removing the front wall of all the interior space, we'll go ahead and redo those rooms along the front, new flooring, patch up the rest of the walls, paint. And so at least they'll start life with about a quarter of their building completely remodeled. And then we can plan going into the future budget years about bathrooms, kitchens, labs, all those are the areas that are just going to need that done. And we feel pretty comfortable that we can do it right, give it a good facelift, make it a secured envelope, and should be able to stay under $100,000 on all this. Now, the one caveat to that is once we take that front off, how far back? The EFIS system wraps about 20 feet, both on the south and north side of it. We're going to pull that off and replace it with a cementitious siding that's going to be a little bit better for maintenance and durability. But, if we get in, we're going to have to keep going until we get all the rot out of it and everything else. And I think with $100,000, there's enough contingency to do there. This solves the immediate problems. I am not going to sit here and say that, as you know, the Haven is landlocked. They have a landfill that cannot be encroached upon to the south. They have all the city operations on the north. Ultimately, sometime in the future, our population has doubled since this facility opened in this location. And unfortunately, I would say there's probably a correlation between population and pets that need adoption and taken care of, or animals that are not pets that need adoption taken care of. So ultimately, I think the bigger picture is looking into the future, and where would a new properly sized animal shelter go? But this will at least buy us some immediate time, as well as this is our building, and one day if the Haven is not in this building, that building still would be available to the city for some other purpose. Be glad to answer any questions.
Sure. Council, any questions for Richard at this time?
All right, we're gonna get plans put together and get them out in the street, and hopefully be back to ask you to award a bid, okay?
Thank you, Richard.
All right, thank you.
All right, next, I know that Chief Hollingshead had something she wanted to bring up at this point, related to RV parking at the Fairhope Library.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I was right, you wanted to talk about this, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I do. I know that we're about 2 weeks out from Mardi Gras, and one of the things that we're looking at to try to fix is our handicap parking. So the RV, where the RVs are currently, that takes up about 70 parking spots in that area. And the area that we're using currently is right there behind Jewelwin's. And it's not really feasible to use that location because at 5 o'clock, the streets close and we're not able to get vehicles, handicap vehicles in and out of there. So we've been using the spot right there in front of the library, which is only about 25 spots. So what we were originally, we're going to ask you to maybe to revoke the resolution, but what I'm asking is maybe we look at it and try to find another location for maybe the RVs and work on providing additional handicap parking during the parades.
Okay. Is this something that we were trying to have take effect for this year's Mardi Gras, or something that we're looking to change for future?
Well, originally, we would have liked to have had this taken care of before the Mardi Gras season. I know that we're 2 weeks out, but it's something that I would at least like for y'all to consider for this Mardi Gras, but if not, we definitely need to have further discussion to try to get this fixed for next season.
Yeah, I think you make some good points, you know, and this is something, and just me looking at it, the little bit that I have, you know, there's, I guess, multiple factors to look at it and whether or not this is something we should continue. I mean, obviously, I think when it was brought up and enacted in 18, I think it was seen as a good thing, as an amenity for locals in Fairhope during the Mardi Gras season, and it was generated a little bit of revenue, and was just sort of seen, I think, really as a non-issue. And obviously, as it grows and we grow,
Yes.
that there are maybe some things that complicate it a little bit more. And I think, you know, obviously handicap parking is one of the issues, which
Yeah, that is
obviously should
correct.
be an issue for all of us. And my first thought was, well, let's reduce the amount of people we allow, that would, reduce the amount of RVs we allow, and then that would reduce the RVs and then increase the amount of parking available. But then, if you do that, you ultimately reduce any revenue you're gonna generate, which then means
But how much revenue do we generate from that?
about $3,500 per year.
It's not.
So it's not significant either way, that's what I'm saying. So if you cut it in half, you're really making the revenue portion of it a non-factor. But the idea of relocating, or relocating where we allow them to be might be an easier.
Well, that specific
Yes.
area right there is perfect because it's right off of the route.
Right.
And you can get in and out with no problem. We can
mean
get people in
88
and out of
miles?
there.
You
And
mean the
there's
handicap?
plenty of parking there.
Yeah, I guess I mean relocating where we let the RVs go, so that
Right.
that area would be accessible for parking and whatnot. I do think we're probably pushing on being able to change it all for this Mardi Gras. Maybe we can make some change, I just don't know what that is.
How difficult that we're not dissolving the resolution, would it be to just change, is that, I mean.
You'd be amending the resolution, I mean, or amending the ordinance essentially. The resolution, you'd be
It's a
amending the
resolution.
resolution. I don't know, Marcus, what's
What's-
protocol?
Probably just rescind the resolution, just depends, either you amend it to cut them in half or whatever you want to do, or you.
Location-wise.
rescind the whole thing.
Or
Did we
move 'em-
specify?
Or move them somewhere else. Yeah, it's specified where they can
Okay.
be, yeah.
Okay.
So what's the process for that, though? I mean, you know,
You just draft a resolution doing that, and I don't know what the resolution number was, the original one.
Right.
You have to
Yeah.
amend that specific one.
but I mean, for putting it out and advertising or anything like
I don't
that.
think you have to do
Yeah,
that in
it's a-
resolution.
Well, no, I mean, but
Yeah.
you know, as far as protocol, what we normally would do.
You
Or-
set it on the next agenda unless you want to vote on something tonight.
Immediate
Set it on the next
consideration.
agenda and have it, you know, there's no advertising
Right.
protocol. Depends on if we got people that have already, made reservations. and
Or paid
stuff.
the issue would be money,
Yeah.
right? But
As
then-
of right now, we don't have anyone that's made any reservations.
Have we asked, do we have a list? Have we had people inquire about doing it at this point?
Maybe 5 people.
Okay. I mean, what have we told them at this point? Is,
I will know something February
Okay.
1st.
Have we done any sort of analysis on, I know Corey and I talked briefly before the meeting, but from a relocation standpoint, have we done any kind of analysis on where the best place to relocate the RV parking would be?
No, the, right there at Summit where USA was, or where USA is on Summit, that's an area that's been brought up, but I don't know of any other, yeah, they'd have to use generators there. But other than that, no.
That's right, you got electrical hookups, don't we?
Yeah, right now at the library.
30 hookups at that site.
Council, anybody else got anything on this? I don't have again, I've talked to the chief about this, and I don't have a preference one way or the other as far as RVs. Again, I think it's an amenity that we offer.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's not a service of any kind. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not something that I have tremendous guilt just taken away, but
But if I may, ADA compliance outweighs or trumps RVs.
It would, but I don't know that we are being non-compliant by letting them take up some of these parking spots. It's
That's
just not
hearsay.
as convenient, maybe, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think-
I will say, just on Councilman Burrell's behalf, he did call me before the meeting, and he is in favor of leaving it as it is. Not that he'd be resistant to any change to it, but just without kind of knowing where we were going with it, that his position was, or his,
Is there another area we could bring some handicap folks, you know, or designate as handicap parking?
I don't know, and that's really sort of my hesitancy in making any dramatic changes right now, because I don't really,
I mean, the largest other parking area we would have would be the Civic Center.
Right.
And you're using that for the
Yeah.
balance.
Right.
So you can't really designate it as handicap parking. And I mean, the parking garage, I know Councilman Burrell had mentioned the parking garage, but again, there's certain spots that are allocated for that, and it's not necessarily right on the parade route like the parking garage, you were trapped.
You're trapped, right?
Yeah,
Someone have to
forever.
get you out of there if you're ADA, it's not ADA. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, my personal thought is that the juice isn't worth the squeeze on trying to cater to the RVs, but I would feel, that we probably owe it to Councilman Burrell to decide that when he's here, because this was his idea, I think, originally, and I'd hate to take any kind of action to undo something if he's not even here to
Yeah, we went to it tonight.
speak for or against it, you know?
Yeah.
yeah, I think my.
And it might be a little late this year anyways to make
Yeah,
a change.
and my thought, again,
Yeah.
I don't disagree with anything anybody said, but I would, and I should say I don't disagree, that I do agree with both what Councilman Martin and what Councilman Conyers have said about it. I would probably want a little better idea of what we were gonna do with what the RV setup would look like and maybe the logistics of that.
Oh,
Or do we?
I was gonna say,
even
or
wanna
just do
continue
away
to
with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of,
Yeah.
I think what Jimmy said may be right, that the juice might not be worth the squeeze.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 5 people.
And, you know, yeah, I think for the people who do it, I think that they.
Is there a
really enjoy it,
cutoff
but-
date to sign up? Is what?
I think it was February 1st. Is that what you said? Or is there a cutoff date?
There isn't.
It's just first come, first served normally,
Right, I
so.
mean, the first-
Oh, so there's
Yeah.
no sign, it's just.
Well,
you get
no,
there.
there is a sign up, but it's the first people that sign up and pay get the spots. And so they can, if it's
What-
open the day before, then you can sign up the day before.
What I'm asking is, this is what I'm asking. She only called out 5. We only have 5 this year, then it might work out for everybody.
Yeah, if we don't have enough interest, then that might be
That might be a win-win, but I don't know, that's why I'm asking if there's a cutoff, you might wanna cut it off. I mean, I don't, that's a thought, I don't know if y'all have a cutoff date or not, but,
Has it been full before?
No. I think there's up to 14 slots.
Yeah, there
And
is
I
up
don't
to
think
14.
there's been but maybe 8 to 9
that's still a lot.
each time. I mean, it's not, yeah, there's a lot, but it's not full.
It looks like it is probably used more for the female parades than it is for the men's parade. We've never sold all the spots.
Okay.
And typically, they start asking to sign up January 1st, because I have to hold them off till a certain time,
Right.
because they're knocking down the door. They would do it the weekend after they leave to sign up for the next year. I allowed it, but I wait. And that's why I told them this time that it would be February, because I know we want to discuss it and bring it to y'all beforehand.
When's our first meeting in
So-
February?
The third one will be after.
Yeah, it's going to be after the council.
So we have to make something.
Hey, logistically, I just don't see how you can get it done between now and the next, we're not gonna do anything tonight.
No,
Yeah, I feel like maybe you gotta let it ride this
Yeah.
You gotta have a
year.
plan that put,
Yeah.
or like I say, end it completely, but that would take a little bit more discussion. I think some may want to put a little input out there before we did something to end it.
But maybe we could have the discussion like in March right after Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
And just say, do we want to do this next year or not?
3 or 4 days before, and then you know, okay, I've only got 4 RVs in there, I'm gonna have extra parking for the balance of that,
Yeah, I mean, we could,
kind of as an interim stopgap. That way you've got half the parking lot. If you only have 3 RVs or 4 RVs, you'd have half.
Well, let me just interrupt for a minute. One of the things that we have issues with is also those that are staying in there, they're only allotted so many parking spaces.
They're not allotted any.
I thought there was
They're allotted
on the,
the spot that their RV sits in.
so they don't get,
If people don't reserve the other
Okay.
spots, then yes, they can come in and park in.
and that's gonna, we're gonna have to we'll have to stay in there and maintain that. Otherwise, they'll move the barricades and they'll fill that spot up. And we have problems with that anyway.
Say that one more time, Chief, I'm sorry. What happens?
If we don't have someone in there to monitor that,
Oh,
they
a
will.
staff member?
They will move the barricades and then park in there for the RVs.
Oh.
So that's just one of the things that we've experienced in the past.
wonder if we could, and again, I mean, every suggestion I have just creates more work for what's a very minor amount of revenue. And I mean, so I don't even know
And a
it's,
small group of people.
and a small group of people, yeah. Okay. Guys, anybody else got any questions for the chief? I think what I'm hearing is we're kind of all on this, or at least going in the same direction. I think the concern is doing it so quickly without much opportunity to figure out a plan to change it. So it may be that we roll as is for this year, but then figure out exactly what we want to do, if we want to do it moving forward. I think that's the, am I reading that right?
I think that's kind of where, I'd be in favor of changing. I just don't want to do it at the last minute if people are making plans for that. And it sounds like they're kind of at bay, and I hate to take any action if Councilman Burrell's not here to speak for it, if we know he's in favor of it, and he kind of came up with the idea originally, I believe. I don't know, I feel like he ought to be present to have that conversation. And maybe it's something we address right at the end of Mardi Gras and say, do we want to do this anymore or not? And I thought we were going to do that this past time, but
Are there any more issues other than ADA compliance?
As
do you have
Do my-
any issues with the people that are staying in there?
we've had
or
some
trash or
no, we've had some
grills or
issues in the
anything like that?
past. I mean, we get noise complaints, we get alcohol on city property, trash, littering. We've got fire pits, and they're not supposed to have fire pits, and we respond to fire pits.
So do we need to add to
Oh,
that?
yeah.
Down the road.
Pulling barricades, shutting down the roads. So there's multiple other things that we deal with as a public safety.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are, that's,
Can we, okay.
yeah, that's significant in my mind. I mean, again, if we were talking about some big service we're
Right.
providing, it'd be one thing, but this is all right, well, thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Yeah, I hate that we can't
Okay. It's
act right this
it's
second.
definitely something we need to consider in the future.
I agree.
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, council, next up, we have committee updates. Councilman Martin.
Yeah, not used to being first again.
Hey, well,
You messed me up, man. I was like, why you calling me?
Take your time. No,
Jack's
we're
not
at
here.
your leisure, please.
No, city committee, rec board met, I think one of the issues is on the agenda tonight. We'll talk about that. But I think we're about to hire or increase the number of the membership on the rec board. That should be coming to us soon. It's not on this agenda, but it should be coming soon. I think that was pretty much all that we talked about. There were some things with the swimming pool that we are trying to resolve, I think I got a email recently about the swimming pool. It's something that we can, but cold versus hot type deal with the kids. So that was a particular issue that we're dealing with right now with the boilers and all, so. But other than that, that's pretty much what we have as far as the recreation board. I didn't have anything else.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I did not have any updates at this time.
Mr. Boone?
We had a harbor board meeting, but did not have enough people to make a quorum, so we just chatted amongst ourselves, and that was pretty much it.
All right, I have one, Mayor Sullivan and I met with a representative from the State Historic Preservation Committee. Just to kind of, and I was able to ask a couple of questions, and I believe the mayor did as well, that sort of cleared up some of the conversation that we had last time when we had this discussion in the work session. But I think the idea was to have that representative come back down to a work session to answer those for everybody, so that everybody has the opportunity to kind of learn and clear up any misconceptions we all might have, so we can figure out whether that's something we want to do. And if we do, exactly what we want that to look like, because there are obviously a lot of different ways you can set that up.
Yeah.
All right. Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. All right. That's the only update I have. Next, we're going to department head updates. So everybody feel free to jump up, and if you got something on the agenda, let us know, and I'll start. Kim? You do have an item on the agenda?
She has every item on the agenda.
Every item on the agenda.
There's money involved.
Item number 17 on the workers' comp. So prior to me being here, 2000, I believe 17 or 18, the city switched workers' comp to the travelers. And now we got quotes this year that the municipal workers' comp fund is $9,100 less. And so we're choosing, usually it's under the treasurer's discretion, but we're choosing to move back to that fund. We think that's just a better option. And once you're in that program for 3 years, then you have opportunity to get dividends back from the fund. And so, anyway, that's on the agenda if you have any questions on it. And then it was a two-part that the council has to choose to go into this fund. And the second piece is that for safety. So, I mean, and Corey may be able to answer any questions on that, but those were two sample resolutions they sent us to go with our application.
So is the second part number 18?
Mm-hmm.
It's Donnie.
Hiding back there. All right. That was easy enough. Thank you, Kim. All right, going through. Corey, anything?
Just what Kim said about me.
Okay. Yeah, 19, I would encourage anybody who has not gone to go at this point. Me and Councilman Martin, let's get it done.
Yeah. I read it.
No pressure. Anybody else that needs to go, go. All right, moving through. Richard?
Let's do the easy ones first, and I'll backtrack to number 8. I can discuss number 11. This is the story of our lawnmower, which you've already heard, chapter 1. This is chapter 2. As you know, we've had 2 John Deere diesel out front mowers on the bid list now running for 2 years. Last budget year, we came to you and we purchased a Skag diesel, but we asked to keep those 2 mowers on purchase order active because we were locked in at a price. John Deere has confirmed that they will not be able to deliver either of those 2 lawnmowers in this budget year. Jerry Pate, which is the commercial Toro dealership out of Pensacola, has a Toro diesel out front mower in the pipeline, meaning it is coming to his dealership that is unassigned, And we're asking, and it is right there in line with what those John Deeres, it's an equivalent Toro of that John Deere. We're asking to go ahead and purchase that, but with keeping that purchase order still out there for the John Deere, and again, carrying it over and adding the additional mower, since this Toro will replace one of those John Deeres budgetarily in the 2024 budget. So that's what that is. And I have a feeling that we could have this conversation a year from now again. So, and it may be a Kubota or some other brand. Number 13, pretty straightforward. This is fire station number 3. This is the actual truck bay floor. I know that you would think that painting the floor is pretty straightforward, but this does include the scraping, grinding, and sanding and removal of the old coating system before the new one goes down. It came in a little higher in the budget, but the fire maintenance did have some excess that Treasurer said was fine. I think it was $1,000 that needed to roll over to cover that 18, so that there is budget for it. Number 14, as you know, y'all authorized the application of a TAP grant for $1 million worth of sidewalks, which they're matching $800,000. Engineering is 100% on us, and you have Neil Schaefer's proposal in there. And in that resolution, we did identify $83,000 as the cost of engineering, and we're a little bit under that, and that will be a transfer from the general fund to cover that. And then number 16 is the encapsulation of what we discussed in depth at last meeting's work session, and that is to discontinue with our third-party service of janitorial service and bring in 3 full-time city custodians to do that. So we're asking for 3 things. One, to fund the 3 full-time custodians, pay grade 4. We apparently never removed the 5 part-timers from the roles, so we're asking you to do that. Defund the 5 part-time custodians, pay grade forward, and then defund the annual custodial service contract with Service Masters for an automatic renewal set for January 26, 2023, and authorize the mayor to enter a month-to-month contract with Service Masters. And they said that they would be willing to go month-to-month. And so as soon as we get our 3 permanent in, we would conclude that contract and it would go away. And then number 8 I can speak to, as well as we have the engineer here, as well as Pat's intimately aware with this as well. And the only thing I do want to, and it may be something y'all desire change in the future, when we go through a bid process and you folks end up with a recommendation, it says we recommend you to approve, okay? Well, let me tell you the process that purchasing and all of us are involved with that, where that recommendation comes from. And that is, 1, did the bidder meet the scope of work that was advertised? Was the bidder qualified? Is the bid competitive? In this case, for the Founders Track, we had 4 respondent bids, and they're clustered pretty tight, I think about 3% between 1 and 2. Has bid law been met? State of Alabama. Are there any irregularities or unbalanced bids? If the answer is no. And then one of the things we checked, did the bid fall within reason of the engineer's estimate of probable cost? And I'll tell you, the engineer's estimate of probable cost was $2.25 million to $2.5 million, so the answer is yes. So when all those boxes are checked, our recommendation is it's an approvable bid, okay? But we're really not saying you should approve it, or because that is the only you as a body can approve a bid. We're just saying, we're just giving you, our statement is everything is proper. It is approvable. And I think sometimes y'all feel like y'all get put in a bad position because we say, yes, approve it. Well, no, what we're really saying is that all of the processes that are required by law and our internal procurement regulations have been met, and there's no irregularities, there's no issues with approving it. So, and that's, I think that's something that everybody should understand, is that I'm not sitting here saying, yes, you should approve this. I'm just saying it's appropriate.
It checks all the boxes.
It's appropriate to be approved because we've done all the things that are supposed to be done by law. That is the case, and I know there's a lot of things that are probably having a lot of questions, but I do want to let you know that when this project was in its gestational period and we were working with Sawgrass, who was the engineer of record, You know, one of the questions that Sawgrass asked Pat, myself, as well as the mayor, was, you know, what do you expect this track and field facility to be designed to meet a certification for a state meet, a regional meet, and there's a national organization that says this is what you have to design to be a certified track and field venue? And we answered yes, okay? So one, every element in this is there to make sure that the City of Fairhope could host a track meet for a regional or state competition. Really, the only extras that are in this project beyond and above what is required in that minimum is engineer record said, hey, that upper parking lot, the existing one, by the time the construction gets through here, it's probably going to be coming apart. I would recommend that we put resurfacing in there because it needs it now, and that way if the contractor, you know, cracks it up and potholes it, he's going to be resurfacing it and restriping it so it'll be new like the rest of the facility. And the other one was dual long jumps. And I remember having this conversation and it made sense to me. The long jumps are oriented east and west, and depending upon the time of the day, you don't want to be jumping into the sun. It's kind of like tennis courts. You don't ever put them east and west. You have to put them north and south. And that is probably the only gilding of the lily here, is having dual long jumps. There was a reason behind it, and in reality, if that's an issue, we could take that out of the contract because it's not a substantial change because the scope of work didn't change. They're going to build a long jump. They're just going to build one instead of two, and we can figure out the orientation, whether they're going to jump to the east or jump to the west. But that, I did just want to, I know there's been a lot of conversation. It is an expensive project. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. But understand, we're building a track that has no gradient change, meaning a competition track is level. It is just crowned in a way to drain, but it from long end to long end, it is perfectly flat. Well, we're putting in a location that's on two terraced fields. So one of those fields has to come down in elevation and one has to come up. Also, this project has significant water and sewer utility relocates, and there are 3 very large, very tall light poles that have to be relocated, and there's a pretty large budget number hanging in this for that relocation because we're not sure what that's going to ultimately be, but it's going to be a pass-through from the contractor. So, plus there's a new parking lot being built to support this facility as well. So I did want to answer that, and I realize y'all got a tough decision because these are dollars and cents, but I wanted you to understand strictly from your Public Works Director standpoint, when we make a recommendation, it is not that we're necessarily an advocate for the project. We're telling you that everything is appropriately been met in the procurement process. Any questions that I can answer?
Richard, I don't know that we might have to, this might be something we have to take up during the meeting, just because I imagine there will be some questions on this. And
Okay.
I want to have everybody else have
Yes,
the
sir.
opportunity to get through.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
So Richard might not be asking for y'all to approve his. I will be asking y'all to approve mine. No, we do have agenda number 9 in the gas department. It's a welding truck. We did put it out for bid. We got one bidder, and we are asking that city council approve this truck.
Yeah,
I think it was $72,000 in the budget, so it came in at $74,700, $64,700.
64 day, yeah. All right. Yeah, man, you're good. You're 7,200 to the good, so.
Yes, sir.
Makes it easy.
And it comes with a work body on it, so it's ready to go.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pat?
Thank you. I do have item number 10 on the agenda tonight. That is for the sod for the new baseball fields. It'd be kind of difficult to play ball without it. So I'm hoping that you'll go along with that for me. I did reach out to multiple sod farms in the state of Alabama looking for this specific hybrid Tiff-Tuff Bermuda because we will be playing on it essentially right after it's planted. It may have two to 3 weeks rooting time before we have to get on it. So this is the most durable plant that's out there. that will recover from traffic and get established quickly, so that's the reason I went with that. There was another sod farm in the Foley area, but they could not provide it. They don't have it in inventory until later in the spring, so, but this was a pretty good price on a certified Bermuda grass.
Okay, thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Jason, you got anything else on the agenda? What else I got back there? Conrad, Paige? Hunter, I know you got something. Eric? Sir. Bobby?
Yep.
Bobby, you have the weather alert system on there?
Yep.
Okay. Self-explanatory? Yes. Alerts weather? Got it.
Did you hear it?
All right, guys, I think that might be it, and then we will adjourn and come back at 6 for the council meeting. Thank you.